Hey guys, what's going on? So I think we had a lot of interesting matchups in week 1. I think we're also getting a lot of interesting matchups in week 2. So I just wanted to go through each game and give my prediction. And I think there's 10 games that are pretty expected as to what's going to happen, and then there's 6 that are pretty close to call. So starting with the expected ones, 49ers over the Vikings. I think this is a pretty safe bet given how easy the 49ers defeated the Jets and just given the differences in their teams. You do have the Vikings being able to pull off a win against the 49ers last year. I think that was just more of a fluke. So I don't think it'll be really too much of a competitive game there, and the 49ers are definitely a lot tougher than the New York Giants. And then looking at the Jets and the Titans, I really think the Jets didn't look horrible against the 49ers. I think the score doesn't do its justice. I definitely do think you have moments where Rodgers looked like his old self, and just given the Jets having a good overall team, I think they'll have a decent outlook, and the Titans really won't be too much of trouble for them. And then I think the Cowboys over the Saints. Saints had a good win against the Panthers, but Carolina is really at the bottom end of the NFL. And the Cowboys being a really good team recently, I don't think that'll be too much of an issue there. Chargers and Panthers, a little bit more of a close game because I really don't like how the Chargers looked against the Raiders, but they did win comfortably, so I think the Chargers will do the same thing here again. And then Ravens over the Raiders, I think this is pretty much a no-brainer regardless of the Ravens week 1 loss. And then Washington and New York, I think the Commanders are going to take this. I really like how Jaden Daniels looked against the Buccaneers, and I think the Commanders will be a step above teams like the Giants or the Panthers or the Titans this year, even though I don't see them making a playoff run. And while the Bengals and Chiefs, I think earlier looked like this was going to be a competitive game, given the Bengals lost to the Patriots, I don't really think the Bengals and Joe Burrow are going to have enough to stay with the Chiefs, so I think the Chiefs will pull away from them. And then same thing with the Texans and the Bears. Really poor performance, even though the Bears were able to pull off a win against the Titans. I just don't think they're anywhere where they need to be, and the Texans are just going to roll over them. Same thing for the Eagles and the Falcons. Like the Bears, I think the Falcons were one of those overhyped teams going into this season, and given how the Eagles looked against the Packers, I think it's not even going to be that close of a game. And while I did originally have the Colts and Packers being a close game on paper, if Jordan Love is in fact out due to that end of the game injury, I don't think Love is going to be out for the season, but that doesn't really make this game competitive at all. In that case, I would go with the Colts, which I think is pretty expected. If Love wasn't going to miss this game, I would have it a lot closer, and I probably would give it to the Packers, but in this case, the Colts are the clear favorite here. And now going into the more interesting matchups for this week, starting with the Bills and the Dolphins. I really think this is going to be an interesting game to see how the division is going to unfold for the rest of the season. But I do like the Bills over the Dolphins. I think the Bills win over the Cardinals is just a little bit more impressive. And this is one of the games where I don't agree with the odds. So I think the Bills will have a little bit of an upset in this. And then you have the Browns and the Jaguars. And I think this is a really interesting game because you have the Jaguars hanging fairly well with the Dolphins. Easily could have won that game, and you have the Browns not really putting up any sort of a fight against the Cowboys. But I do think in terms of just the two teams, they are going to be fairly even matched here, but I would say I would have to agree with the odds and go with the Jaguars in this since they were able to hold the Dolphins so low. And in terms of the Seahawks and the Patriots, not too much of a good outlook from either team. You have the Patriots beating the Bengals, which I think is really impressive, so I definitely could see the Patriots upsetting the Seahawks here, but I think the Seahawks just have a little bit more of an established team, and I do think they'll win a close game here. And in terms of the Bucks and the Lions, I do think this is a little bit closer of a game than what the odds have it at, just given it's a rematch from the playoffs, and I think that was a pretty close game until the end, but I do have the Lions beating them again. And then I have the Rams and the Cardinals being a really close game. I think this is also a toss-up. I also wouldn't be surprised if you have the Cardinals upsetting them. I think, again, this is a really good outlook to the NFC West, but I probably would give it to the Rams just because I think they held the Lions so close. And I think the Lions are just a little bit of a step above the Bills this year in terms of overall depth, but that definitely is going to be an exciting game. And in terms of the Steelers and the Broncos, again, two teams that aren't probably going to be that competitive this year. You probably do have to go with the Steelers since they were able to pull off a win against the Falcons and the Broncos lost to the Seahawks. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos are able to get a win here. So those are just my week 2 picks here. Really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you later.